Hello, and welcome to another episode of my Stellaris Let's Play. This is Northstar. I hope you folks are well, are taking care of each other and being kind to yourselves. For those new to my channel, welcome. Those returning, welcome back. New people, I'm disabled following COVID. I apologize. Sometimes I don't play the fastest, forget stuff, have trouble focusing, get sensitive to sound, and have to mess with the volume levels a little bit. Although I do have a amplifier setting on my headset where I can turn it down and you guys can still hear quite clearly, and I use that quite a bit. So as you know, you can still hear stuff, but sometimes to get it just right as well as possible without it bothering me, which is a lot less loud than most you'd want, I do end up messing a little with the computer volume levels. Give me a moment here. Sorry, just throwing on a sweatshirt. I get very weirdly cold sometimes. Like even when it's not cold, it can be 80 degrees and I get cold. Thanks to my long COVID, my body does not react well to environmental stresses, which is one of the main reasons I'm too sick to work. I need this YouTube channel or work enough to what would be considered substantial gainful activity and to actually support myself. And so need disability, but also need I'm trying to get, but the main form in the US SSI is limited by your savings and ridiculous system, which is stupid. Disabled people shouldn't have to have almost no savings to get help, but an SSDI is only a tiny amount of money. And I got screwed out of by a rule in the mid-90s that excludes certain jobs from counting, such as for certain nonprofits, religious organizations, or universities when you're a student. Fuck Newt Gingrich for adding that. It was just designed to screw people out of getting that help. And then, you know, people are unable to survive on just SSI alone, and they're desperate for work even when they can't really, not healthy enough to work. They'll apply for jobs. Employers will point to that and use it to make the workers insecure, even though they have no intention of actually hiring disabled people. It's a mess. I am, for the people who haven't watched my channel, an anti-capitalist, but a Marxist, not a Marxist-Leninist. Specifically, Lenin was wrong about a couple things, but wanting to merge all socialist parties into one was the really, really big one. And he's also wrong about the possible sources of revolutionary activity, as well as didn't seem to understand that democracy could work as a way to establish socialism, which Marx himself wrote about. But Lenin grew up in, well, Russian Empire, which is a very undemocratic society, where democratic processes were not possible under the czars. So, I mean, they had a fig leaf of a legislator, but it held no real power compared to the absolute monarchy. Or even maybe you might consider constitutional, but the monarchs held all the power in Russia at the time. But that what's true for one country isn't true for every other country. In fact, Marx specifically pointed to the United States and UK as places where democracy and democratic processes could, if people want it badly enough, establish socialism. What does that mean? The word is often subject to misinterpretation. It's not generous welfare programs and regulation. That's what social democrats usually want, which is not socialism. It is things like workers' cooperatives, which market socialists, like famously Richard Wolff, you've probably seen him on YouTube, often point towards, and socialized ownership means of production, which is something a little bit different when you say socialized as opposed to worker-owned. The economy in this game is actually something that you might use to understand what it means in some ways. You don't see all decisions made by the elites. There's just politicians by default. You don't have a merchant class unless you take certain traditions or build certain buildings in this game. But capitalism is basically owned by a merchant class. If you become a megacore, you will see executives as the rulers, and that's more what we're talking about. A class of executives and major stockholders who make all the real decisions hold the vast majority of the political power and thus effectively dictate even so-called democracies. They buy off politicians, they fund campaigns, so the politicians don't care what you or me want because they'll do book deals to enrich the politicians, like to make their personal bank accounts huge because they'll buy like 10,000 copies of book they sell for a ridiculous price. It's effectively bribery or speaking fees that are inflated. Some of the banks like Morgan Stanley's and shit are particularly infamous for this kind of crap. But all the major corporations do it, and they create friend groups to do it often instead of doing it directly. And fund think tanks and such, so effectively controlling the economy. So there's that, and yeah, funding campaigns. Politicians don't care, but in this game, you are. I mean, what are you as a player? Are you God? Are you the people? Are you one leader of the country? It's never clear, especially because sometimes you can, like in Hearts Iron, you can start revolutions in your country. That's another Paradox game. In this game, you can sometimes, like, you can get AI revolutions, plays the AI. I think you could switch to playing as a released vassal. So what are you really in this game? That's an interesting question. But you might think of it as an abstraction of the will of your entire population, especially if you're egalitarian instead of authoritarian. And the political power is more evenly distributed, workers and specialists having just as much as the elites. And economic decisions are being made by everyone, you might think. And then your abstraction of what your population wants. And that's what actually socialism is. It's socialized ownership, the means of production, I should say, because socialism can be market socialism. It can just be workers' cooperatives where workers own the businesses they work at. Simple. Although some places call themselves co-ops and the workers don't actually elect the managers or executives, stewards. Most often it's when an actual workers' co-op will call the executives. In this game, if you do Meg 4, plays workers' co-op, you actually have no elites. You have a specialist class known as stewards that replaces them. That's for good reason. It's based on the Mondragon Corporation, where they have stewards. They're a network of workers' cooperatives based out of Spain. That's technically a very large corporation, one of the largest in the world, and they're huge, and they're a network of workers' cooperatives. Workers make all decisions, they elect their managers. Socialized ownership means production. The community, even people who don't work at a place, help make decisions. So, there's a factory in your town. The workers may all vote on decisions. They may get extra votes, but everyone in the town votes, and maybe their votes count for less, but they get to say, which is important for, say, does the factory want to pump shit into the water there or produce a lot of CO2, which affects the whole planet, and is an argument for increasingly having more nationalized and eventually someday a world government globalized ownership of industry, because everyone is affected by the CO2. And regulation has been proven to not work so great because people always find ways around it. Although it becomes too unwieldy for everyone to affect every decision, obviously. But it's often quite manageable to at least have, say, the local population to have a slightly larger group than just the workers. Influence. I'm talking my hands, you guys can't see it. To influence, I'm like gesturing outwards to indicate bigger decision making, and that's socialism. Just even the workers' cooperatives would be, and things can be done through a market economy, as with just workers' cooperatives, or workers' cooperatives and a lot of local ownership. That's still usually considered market socialism because market mechanisms are used to distribute stuff, or it can be more centrally planned, closer to a command economy. There are different ways to do it. Personally, I favor a hybrid approach because some sectors like electrical power generation and infrastructure, highways, roads, hospitals, also schools, these things should probably be managed on a bigger, more national extent, especially transportation networks and electricity. especially with the climatic implications, those industries should be nationalized. Car manufacturers, railroads, electrical power, because otherwise the climate's going to collapse. CO2, and we don't need local communities putting their own profits ahead of the planet surviving. We also need the electorate to care more about these things, though, because even then, if the electorate doesn't vote to, shut down coal power plants, it's not going to help. Even if they can't, because it's now a nationally owned electrical company. That's still not perfect, but it's better because a handful of billionaires can't just ignore what the public wants if the public is actually trying to fight climate change. But a lot of industries can be managed reasonably well with a more decentralized approach. A lot of local ownership. I personally think it's not that much more unwieldy to have town governments and city governments of smaller towns and cities own businesses. It becomes unwieldy if it's like New York City, but little small towns can definitely, are small enough to operate efficiently and manage stuff. Of course, I say this, but actual historical experience shows countries that tried to do socialism with less centrally planning actually were less economically successful than those that did with more. And the Soviet Union had a higher long-term GDP growth rate per person, or GDP per capita percentage annual growth rate, long-term average. So we take like growth over a 10-year period and then figure out based on that what was the average per year, but not actually looking at the yearly growth rates, because capitalism has ups and downs. If you have a 1%, a 7%, and minus 5% growth rate, you average those together, the annual growth rate won't be the same as the 3-year growth rate, which would be lower. And that will make you think capitalism is better when it's not. But when you look at the long-term growth rates, the Soviet Union actually did better in the United States and better than socialist countries that mostly social democracies and socialist countries experimented with more of a market socialism approach in some sectors. It didn't do as well because the government has access to a lot more resources. So even if they actually tend to be less efficient, and they do, the Soviet Union's capital effectiveness rate, there was like a measure of it, was like 92%, and I think the US is like 96 or 8. So money was invested less wisely technically, but there was far less diversion of money into the luxurious lifestyles of a very small elite. And so there was actually more money invested, more overall growth. People worked harder because they would get a fair share of the proceeds of investment in hard work. So it was a bigger pie distributed more fairly, even if there was a little more waste in the process. And that system can additionally be done in a way that's more environmentally friendly. So, because environmental concerns often go beyond just a single town or city. So that's what it actually means to have a socialist economy. You find not a lot of social systems that weren't Marxist Leninists lasted very long because they were couped. The Nazis took them over, that kind of thing. Well, actual socialism, Nazis didn't take over any such countries. But some social democracies that were toying with some of these ideas before World War II. Yes, actual socialism would be Chile, which the US couped, and Burkina Faso, which France couped with US help. Those were democratic socialist countries, and there was one other. There have been 3 in the history of the planet, and they were all destroyed very quickly by Western countries before they got many years. I think Chile lasted 3 years, Burkina Faso 4, before the US and French sponsored coups. But they worked well even in that time period. Still not as well as something more centrally planned, because they tended to go with market socialist approaches. Although Chile was building a cybersyn system that was supposed to add in more central planning, and had started to see early use in getting around logistics bottlenecks that were caused by US set of essentially embargoes that were cutting off Chile from oil and attempts to undermine the trucking industry that the US was doing because the CIA was fucking with the country. And Cybersyn actually worked really well with that CyberSign. It was a very early computer system-based central planning system, light years ahead of what the Soviet Union did when they tried to computerize Gosplan and failed. And had to go back to doing everything on paper and with old-fashioned methods. Cybersyn actually worked. If Chile hadn't been couped by the US, they might have brought that over the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union might not have failed and collapsed in the end. Because their failed attempt to computerize is one of the things that destabilized them. Chile could have given them a system that actually worked as another Marxist country, but unfortunately, and one that could have also exemplified multi-party socialist democracy, although the Soviets might have actually tried to undermine that themselves because their one-party system did not like the competition of
interstellar debris analyzed.
Other ways of doing socialism, and there are periods where Soviet spies went and murdered socialists of other colors around the world. That unfortunately happened. We've analyzed the debris and specialized combat computers. This is part of the reason to say, oh, why, if this idea is so good, why hasn't it been done? Partly because the people who tried to do it were murdered, both by Soviets and Americans. That being said, it's much more aligned with the Soviet way of thinking than the American one, and Sweden actually toyed with the idea of going democratic socialist themselves. They were social democracy, and social democracy sometimes think about going socialist by gradual reform. Such a plan was actually proposed to gradually nationalize industries and backed out of and settled for a mere 4% public ownership of industries because it became obvious the Soviet Union was going to collapse. This was in the 70s. But if this plan hadn't been backed out, they may have tried to play the Soviets and Americans against each other to maintain their independence. But more aligned with the Soviets than the Americans, which led to all sorts of US-funded propaganda. Oh, they're willingly putting themselves behind their current bullshit. Especially because they were actually going to play off Americans against the Soviets at times, was their plan.
We are being hailed.
Alright. Research agreement. Nope. Just gonna absorb them and bring them up to speed technologically that way. Empire, I mean, I think I set scaling AI difficulty stuff, so the AI doesn't do great early on. As they get more bonuses, they should actually pull ahead of me at some point in tech rates. At that point, I'll have grown wide and gain so much benefit. They won't be able to win. Well, they're probably not pull ahead, but pull ahead of for sure where I am now. They'll catch up somewhat. I would do well when they get their full Grand Admiral bonuses. This is not meant to be a hardest game, or I would have just set from Grand Admiral from the start. Make a lot of mistakes when I'm streaming and talking. I make more mistakes. Shit. What was I saying? Mistakes? Oh. You know. Plenty of minerals and plenty of food and more food coming in. Energy at least I can use to buy Enclave stuff. Do that. I guess I can have more specialists. I was going to say, it's going to just refocus the specialist, but Let's do this. I didn't have enough housing now. This doesn't reduce growth rates. Yeah, I'm gonna actually lay off some farmers so that becomes civilians. And so new pops will become civilians too. Because I need to send more to synth and such. Yep, so 200 farmers plus automation. The reason for that being I'll be increasing food production with star bases. Why do these guys say no orders? Aren't they? Oh, they just got here and realized this is now. Shoot. Huh. They didn't lose their hyperspace progress. Cool. Alright. This is an interesting song. Through the Asteroid. Not bad. Housing on synth to pop growth rates, which is also what I've been saying. Population here. Homeworld, which is maxed out on population growth and adding housing. About to have a Genesis arc this month, which I'll be using to sell this ocean world, which will be a farming alloys planet. That's the reason. Cutting down on food production. So I'd start bases. I'll be growing food on that world and then doing catalytic processing. Should gain 2 districts from this world when I the Genesis preserve. You know what, you use 14 districts right now when the Genesis preserve is turned to Genesis Monument after uplift pops. Might not be too much longer. Almost done with gene banks. Ooh, I came so close to having this done this month. 3 away. 3 away. Too bad I can't put a will into nano vitality crops and have it stick around. Oh wow. Oh. Maybe there's a district that could disband early to get that tech a month earlier. Ah, yes, there is a mining district. I could do that. We'll get less mining automation, unfortunately, but I'm sure it's worth the energy anyhow with how much of a ridiculous surplus I have of minerals. I mean, it's 7.2 energy upkeep for 75 more automated mining jobs, which which is base 3 minerals, but then with multipliers. It's around 9 minerals. It's profitable if it delays important tech by a month. Seems to indicate it's going to use a whole bunch of stored research. Thought it would reduce the use. Maybe that was changed, but yeah, if I shutter the mine, if I demolish a mine, one of them, this will allow me to maintain optimal pop growth with fewer pops. A higher planet capacity. And they send pops elsewhere where they actually generate population. It's a major investment, of course. A bunch of pops will have to become civilians. Way off. Wait, you can remove automated jobs? Yeah, I would never do that. 22 food for, yeah, quite cost effective to automate. It's more a matter of needing to essentially invest resources in pop growth. So I could resell these unemployed pops now. Is this an extra 30 unity per 100? And what unity in total pop growth? And 20. Let's see what these groups correspond to. Pacifist. Authoritarian is 325 group. We're happier. Whoa. For some reason, they cost way more. Must have to do with unemployed versus employed pops. 1104. What group is that? Ah. These authoritarians are actually in a faction. Alright, that's the group I want to resell then, if they're cheap enough. Lucent. $200 pops resettled. Growth has dropped slightly below max. Gained, yeah, more pop growth here. Filled in nearly all the available jobs here. Those extra pops will increase the number of enforcers. A little bit. This should be enough to create one defense army. Civilians should end up. Am I still out of? Oh, just updated. Yeah, there's already some civilians on this world. Adding city districts will solve that, though. Or a generator district, maybe. That would hurt pop growth. Alright, There's actually a monument here and not. Listen. It's a robot. Civilian, which... Well, it's not using any minis now. It's using a lot of housing. Interesting. Well, I guess it always does robots. I guess that was changed. I don't know. Guess I should consider stopping pre-settlement of Anchor. Now, delay the next set pre-settlement. Yeah, probably. That's useful, I suppose. What is my starbase deep? Or afford to go one over, but I'll do it up here. Well, let's just do expansion planner. It's in 4. Since I'll be building another shipyard soon. Coin designation. Oh yeah, I can set it here. This is another mostly ag world, I guess. Some city districts, are we? Trying to do a little engineering. That will be done first. Fun. That one right after this Genesis Arc. Probably. Yeah, pop growth. All that. Very important. Got the minerals to develop. stuff. All right. Hmm. Got pops that need to demote into civilians, and they will. Need to resell still more pops off. I could use squires and anchor. It's worth it at the uni by the time they would have turned civilians. Alright, that went to anchor. Yep, random one squires. Robots produce as many as we don't consume them. Yeah, what the rules are now to have robots work as domestic servants, but whatever. It's no place or anything else. Robots. Oh, let's just see what happens. Change the rates of these robots. Just 'cause I'm curious, I shouldn't make assumptions without testing them. It's never had any effect on anything. We won't till next month. Yeah. Might have reduced civilian job efficiency. It certainly didn't make them do domestic stuff, which I thought they need domestic protocols for that. So I figured. Alright. Always good to test your assumptions. I mean, this is part of what led me to my current political views. Because I certainly grew up a typical American centrist, actually right of center indoctrination. Not typical, maybe even a little more right wing than some. But by testing my ideas against historical evidence and logic, you know, it became obvious that they were incorrect. Reload it, recalculate stuff anyhow. Didn't I just resettle some pops from here? Settle pops off the world. How can they still be sitting there unemployed? There we go. Some unfilled minor jobs. Starting to really impact pop growth. I probably don't want to do too many more of those. 3 sapiens and stuff, that when they're uplifted will be great miners, the rolls here. They have a bonus to worker job output. Multiplicative instead of additive bonus. And they make better soldiers. You just don't want them as researchers, that's all. Anyways, lots of squires here. Much better many situation than before. Better pop growth than an anchor than before. Ding. Robots and anchor may actually give me a uni edict fund minis. Not terrible to have. Extra maze from being pacifist, extra edict fund from authoritarian, extra uni from spirituals, and governing ethics attraction. Do the monument always. How bad the mini situation is, definitely not bad to have them. Alright. Habitat, which is why. These are what they are there. Growth is king. For now, anyways. Some C districts for metallurgists. And then the farmer jobs. Yeah. You know, it's more food. It's in prime. Given a choice between solely demoting unemployed pops and enforcers, yeah, I should take the enforcers. These are just gonna get promoted later to more artisans or something. With social welfare, they both have the same consumer goods upkeep, and specialists provide more uni. I'm having more poke power, so boom. Really don't need more minerals, so Actually, go from this to outpost here so I can get started on a starbase. And then have another hydroponics bay right away. Oop. Shipyards are in one of these slots. Whoops daisy. So hydroponics and then a shipyard. Actually, shipyard, then hydroponics. Need those Genesis arcs to start gaining genetic memory. In the worlds, even if I don't really develop them or put many pops on them. Oh, these guys are, well, in place. Let's too focused on the colonies a little bit. Second. Sorry, ant problems. Guy was in this room before me used to eat here, and the ants probably got used to coming in this room. I wish people wouldn't eat in their rooms. It's freaking stupid. You get ants, and they crawl into beds and such looking for food. Wait a second. I destroyed that district on the first of them. Oh. That's gonna be a slight problem. This is like 5 food from the star bases and a little more farmers. I'm curious what happens. Let me save here. Some of the cost of a tech is less than the Didn't this just go down? Due to demolishing a district? What? Did it not recalculate? What the heck was that? Just because I didn't demolish the district literally a day earlier when I re-up. Right. Oh well.
Research concluded.
Gene banks. Gene banks filter and create available gems for deployment in clones. Colonial centralization. It'll no longer be over capacity for my leaders. Upgrade capital. I like hostile environment adaptation though. That's really cool too. These techs have to roll the same time. Extra 10% resources from jobs. Housing amenities. Heck with it. Yep, let's grab colonial centralization. Also prerequisites and texts are used to be at least. So you can let me recruit a new commander. Oh. None of these are ones I'd want. Grab. Jet trigger soon enough. Yeah. It's resources more in Unity. Here, max back out when the city district is done. Or even just as population grows over time. And the end's crawling towards the ceiling. Lovely. Give me a sec, guys. Sorry about that. Yeah, I never like it when ants crawl over me on the ceiling. I've occasionally had them lose their grips and drop onto me and startle, frighten the heck out of me. Better just to crush them, which thing is now crushed. And of course they'll bite you sometimes, which they've done. Macau. That's the name of that calling ship. Huh. Okay, this is an entirely inefficient pattern of surveys. Boom. It's a way to gain experience for the scientist. Maybe find some anomalies. Maybe. Boom. New place. Probably because the trigger because all the colonies in building. I don't know. $9,289 Alari pops. Woo. 114 robots now. 2 are still. They must have. I don't think they're getting. Well, no, they're probably getting selected for growth, but it's a really tiny amount of growth and low chance that they'll actually grow in any given month. But if they do, they increase the number 50%. So it's just a lot of chance when there's such a tiny population where they grow. Sometimes they're happening fast, sometimes slow. There's a large population grows at a steady, predictable rate. You know, based on whether people have marriages that lead to kids or not, I guess. Or other extramarital relationships. Because, let's be honest, that probably occurs quite a lot in a future success society as well. With relative abundance, hopefully, if the society isn't too oppressive. And everyone isn't living in poverty or whatever. Leading to people being a little more confident of their ability to survive and maybe save and move past the conservatism that leads to shade people trying to punish people for doing those sort of things when they happen. I don't have any kids myself, but I'm not going to shame people end up having them.
System survey concluded.
Their life within plan, although it is irresponsible in a way for sure. Because, you know, they're bringing up life in. We still live in a society where those kids are going to have much harder time. Life is hard enough without huge disadvantages. But, yeah. Promise more of society treats them, and that it's not. Capitalism is not fair. It helps those who are already ahead get further ahead, which, of course, stable family situation is one type of social capital. Anyways.